What if this is the year everything finally changes? Not because you try harder, but because you become different. Not a new goal, not another promise, a new way of thinking, moving, and showing up every single day. Most people are running on programs they never chose. Old habits, old emotions, old identities, and then they wonder why nothing shifts. Today, that ends. Because when you reprogram your mind and your body, you don't just change what you do, you change what's possible. This isn't about motivation. It's about installing a new operating system for your life, starting right now. Let me tell you something that will change how you see yourself starting right now. Most people think transformation begins with a new goal, a new plan, a new strategy. That's why they keep starting every year fired up and ending it frustrated. Because goals don't run your life, identity does. And until you change who you believe you are, every goal you set is fighting uphill against an old self-image that's been running the show for decades. Here's the truth most people never hear. You will never consistently outperform the story you tell yourself about who you are. You don't wake up every morning and decide your habits. You act in alignment with your identity. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you'll find ways to struggle. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, you won't even notice when you sabotage momentum. It won't feel like failure. It'll feel familiar. And the brain loves familiar more than it loves success. That's why willpower burns out. That's why motivation fades. You're trying to force new behavior onto an old identity. It's like installing high-performance software on a system that refuses to update. So the first shift, the real shift, is not asking, what do I want? But asking, who must I become to make this inevitable? Because once identity changes, behavior doesn't require effort. It becomes automatic. Think about it. You don't have to motivate yourself to act like who you already believe you are. You don't negotiate with yourself about brushing your teeth because it's part of your identity. But try asking someone who doesn't see themselves as disciplined to suddenly act disciplined and watch the inner war begin. That war is not a lack of ability. It's a lack of identity alignment. Most people are living inside an outdated identity they didn't consciously choose. It was installed by childhood experiences, past failures, labels from other people, moments of pain that created meaning. One emotional event repeated enough times becomes a belief, and that belief quietly becomes a command, not spoken out loud, but obeyed daily. Maybe somewhere along the line you decided I'm not good with money, or I always mess things up, or I'm just not that confident, and you didn't realize it. But from that moment on, your nervous system, your focus, your habits, all of it went to work proving that belief right. Not because it's true, but because your brain is wired to stay consistent with who you think you are. But here's the breakthrough most people miss. Identity is not fixed. It's trained, it's conditioned, and anything that's been conditioned can be reconditioned. The same brain that learned limitation can learn power if you give it a stronger reference point. So how do you do that? You don't start by repeating affirmations you don't believe. Your brain is too smart for that. It'll reject words that don't match experience. Instead, you start by making new decisions so clear, so absolute that they redraw the boundaries of who you are. A real decision is not, I'll try. A real decision is, this is who I am now. No negotiation, no backdoor. Identity changes when you link it to action. Small actions done consistently become evidence. Evidence becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. That's the loop. And once you're inside it, momentum replaces force. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in a day. You need to vote for the new identity daily. Every time you act in alignment with who you're becoming, you cast a vote. Miss a day? You didn't fail. You just lost one vote. Get back in the game and keep voting. Identity is built through repetition, not perfection. But here's the key. The brain doesn't respond to logic alone. It responds to emotion. You must associate pain with staying the old self and pleasure with becoming the new one. Because as long as staying the same feels safe, your nervous system will pull you back every time. Comfort is the enemy of identity change. Ask yourself, what does the old identity cost you? Not intellectually, emotionally. What opportunities were missed? What potential went unused? What relationships suffered? When you feel that cost in your body, the brain starts searching for a new path and then attach massive meaning to the new identity. Who do you become when you step into it? What does that version of you give, build, impact, and experience? And let me tell you something important. You don't wait until you feel like the new identity to act. You act first. Feeling follows action, not the other way around. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It's a result. Certainty is not something you wait for. It's something you generate through movement. The moment you change how you move, how you speak, how you breathe, You are sending a signal to your brain, this is who we are now. Physiology reinforces identity faster than thought ever will. That's why your posture, your energy, your standards matter. You're not just showing up, you're training your nervous system to accept a new normal. And as this identity begins to take root, something powerful happens. You stop needing external validation. You stop chasing motivation. You stop negotiating with yourself because now your behavior is no longer something you force. It's something you protect. You protect it because it's who you are. This is why the greatest transformation doesn't start with changing your schedule, your strategy, or your circumstances. It starts with making a declaration, internal but unshakable, about who you are committed to being no matter what. When that decision is real, the mind and body reorganize around it. So if you want this year to be different, don't ask for a better plan, don't decide on a better identity, because the moment you change who you believe you are, everything else has no choice but to follow. Let's go deeper, because this is where most people get stuck, and they don't even realize why. You can change your thoughts all day long, but if your body is still running the same patterns, you'll keep getting pulled back into the same life. That's not weakness, that's biology. Your nervous system is older than your thinking mind, faster than your logic, and far more committed to survival than success. And until you learn how to work with it, it will quietly override every promise you make to yourself. Think about it. Ever notice how you know exactly what to do and still don't do it? That's not a mindset problem. That's a state problem. Your body is stuck in stress, fear, or overwhelm. And in that state, the brain is not designed to grow. It's designed to protect. When your nervous system perceives threat, even imagined threat, it shuts down creativity, discipline, and long-term thinking. You don't rise to your potential, you revert to your conditioning. Most people are living in a constant low-grade survival mod, tight shoulders, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, and they call that normal. But a body that feels unsafe will not allow a mind to take bold action. So you can read all the books, repeat all the affirmations, visualize all you want, but if your physiology doesn't change, nothing sticks. Here's the shift. Transformation doesn't start in the head, it starts in the body. Your posture, your breathing, your movement patterns, they're sending signals to your brain every second about who you are and what's possible. Slouched body, the brain hears defeat, shallow breath. The brain hears danger, collapsed energy. The brain says, stay small, stay safe. But the opposite is also true. When you change your physiology, you change your state. And when you change your state, your perception changes instantly. Problems that felt overwhelming suddenly feel manageable. Decisions that felt terrifying start to feel obvious. That's not motivation. That's nervous system regulation. You see, the body keeps the score. Every past failure, rejection, disappointment, it didn't just stay in your memory. It stayed in your muscles, your breath, your tone of voice. That's why certain situations trigger you before you even think. Your body learned first. And the good news is your body can also learn power, safety, and certainty faster than your mind ever could. So instead of asking, how do I think differently? Start asking, how do I need to move, breathe, and show up to signal strength? Because the nervous system doesn't respond to words. It responds to experience. When you slow and deepen your breath, you're telling your brain, we're safe. When you expand your posture, you're telling your brain, we're capable. When you move with intensity, rhythm, and purpose, you're telling your brain, we're alive. And when the brain receives those signals, it unlocks resource you didn't know were available. This is why peak performers don't wait to feel ready. They create readiness through ritual. They condition their bodies daily to associate stress with focus instead of fear. Over time, what once felt threatening becomes familiar, and what's familiar becomes controllable. Most people are trying to escape discomfort. The elite learn how to train their response to it. They don't eliminate stress. They upgrade how their nervous system processes it. Stress becomes fuel instead of friction. Pressure becomes presence instead of panic. And let me tell you something crucial. This isn't about calming down. It's about mastery. A regulated nervous system doesn't mean low energy. It means directed energy. It means you can turn intensity on when you need it and recover quickly when you don't. That's power. That's resilience. You don't reprogram the nervous system by thinking about it. You do it by practicing new states until they become familiar. Repetition creates safety. Safety creates freedom, and freedom allows growth. That's why small daily physical rituals are non-negotiable. Movement that challenges you, breathing that grounds you, posture that reminds you who you are becoming. These aren't wellness habits. They're identity training. They tell your nervous system, this is our new normal. And when your body begins to trust you again, When it no longer expects danger around every corner, you stop self-sabotaging, you stop procrastinating, you stop freezing at the moment of opportunity, because now your body's no longer fighting your goals, supporting them. This is where real confidence comes from. Not hype, not words, not pretending, but from a body that has learned it can handle stress without collapsing, a body that knows how to recover, a body that feels strong enough to move forward even when certainty is not guaranteed. Once your nervous system is aligned, your mind becomes a powerful ally instead of a constant critic. Focus sharpens, energy stabilizes, action feels cleaner, not forced, and suddenly the habits you struggle with start to feel natural. So if you want to reprogram your life, don't just change what you think, change the state you live in every day, because when your body learns safety, strength, and certainty, your future stops feeling scary and starts feeling inevitable. Now, this is where transformation either finally happens or never happens at all, because you can have clarity, you can have strategy, you can even have a strong identity, but if you don't harness emotion, nothing changes for long. People don't change because they understand. They change because they feel enough pain to say no more, or enough purpose to say this is worth it. And until one of those becomes stronger than your fear, the old pattern wins. Here's what most people misunderstand. They think their problem is laziness or lack of discipline or lack of confidence. That's not it. The real problem is this: the old pattern still feels safer than the unknown, even if it hurts, even if it costs you. Familiar pain feels more controllable than unfamiliar possibility. So the nervous system says, stay here. At least we know this pain. That's why people repeat the same mistakes even after swearing they won't. That's why they go back to habits they hate. It's not because they want to fail. It's because the emotional leverage to change is still too weak. The pain of staying the same hasn't outweighed the fear of stepping forward. Every behavior you repeat is being reinforced by emotion. Either it's giving you comfort, certainty, connection, or a sense of control, or it's helping you avoid something you don't want to feel. And until you interrupt that emotional payoff, E-pattern stays alive. So real change begins when you flip the leverage, when staying the same becomes more painful than changing. And this isn't something you do casually or intellectually. This is something you do decisively. You have to tell the truth. No sugarcoating, no minimizing. What is this pattern costing you? Not someday, now. What does it already cost you in energy, self-respect, time, relationships, opportunity? What does it cost the people you care about when you show up as less than who you know you can be? And if nothing changes, if the next 5 years look like the last 5, what does that future feel like? Most people avoid these questions because they're uncomfortable. But discomfort is the doorway, because when you allow yourself to fully feel the cost, something shifts. The brain stops defending the pattern and starts searching for a way out. Pain becomes a signal instead of a prison. But pain alone is not enough. If all you do is associate pain with the old identity, you'll feel urgency, but not direction. That's why the second half of emotional leverage is just as critical, pleasure with purpose. You must attach massive meaning to who you're becoming. Who do you get to be when you break this pattern? How do you move? How do you speak? How do you lead? How does it feel to wake up with energy instead of regret? To look in the mirror and trust yourself again? To know that when you say you'll do something, you follow through. Your brain must see that future as emotionally compelling. Not vague, not abstract, but real. Because the mind doesn't chase goals, it moves toward emotions. It will endure short-term discomfort for long-term meaning, but only if that meaning is clear and charged. This is where people make another mistake. They wait for emotional leverage to appear. It doesn't. You create it. You condition it. You decide what things mean. Meaning is the ultimate human power. The moment you decide this behavior is no longer who I am, and it ends today, you begin breaking the emotional attachment. And when you decide this is the standard I live by now, you begin installing a new one. Standards shape destiny more than goals ever will. And understand this, patterns don't die quietly. The old identity will fight back. It will whisper rationalizations. It will offer excuses that sound logical and feel reasonable. Just this once. You deserve it. Start tomorrow. That's not weakness. That's conditioning defending itself. This is where emotional leverage becomes your shield. When temptation shows up, you don't argue with it, you outweigh it, you remind yourself what staying the same costs you, you reconnect to what becoming more gives you, you bring the emotion back online because emotion drives action. And the more times you interrupt the old pattern at the emotional level, the weaker it becomes. The more times you reinforce the new pattern with meaning, the stronger it gets. Eventually, the leverage flips permanently. What once pulled you backward now feels wrong. What once felt hard now feels aligned. This is also why change must be immediate in moments that matter. Delayed decisions drain emotional power. When you hesitate, you teach your nervous system that comfort is negotiable and standards are optional. But when you act in the moment, when you interrupt the pattern as it's happening, you send a new signal, we are in control now, and that builds self-trust. Self-trust is not built by promises. It's built by kept commitments, especially when it's uncomfortable. Every time you act in alignment with the new standard, you stack emotional evidence. And evidence creates belief faster than anything else. Let me be clear. This isn't about beating yourself up. Guilt weakens lev. Arrogance, clarity strengthens it. You're not here to punish the old self. You're here to outgrow it. Compassion keeps you moving forward. Standards keep you from going backward. As this emotional leverage locks in, something incredible happens. You stop relying on motivation. You stop forcing discipline, because now the old pattern doesn't even feel attractive anymore. It feels expensive, and the new behavior doesn't feel forced. It feels right. That's when change becomes sustainable. That's when habits stick. That's when identity upgrades permanently. So if you want this transformation to last, don't just change what you do. Change what staying the same means to you, and change what becoming more makes possible. Because the moment emotion is aligned, change stops being a struggle and starts becoming a choice you make with certainty. Now here's where everything we've talked about either becomes real or stays as inspiration, because insight without ritual fades. Emotion without structure leaks. Identity without daily reinforcement slowly drifts back to the old normal. The truth is, transformation doesn't happen because of what you understand. It happens because of what you do repeatedly, and what you do repeatedly becomes who you are. Most people are waiting for a breakthrough, but breakthroughs don't build lives. Patterns do. The quality of your life is the quality of your daily rituals, not the big moments, not the dramatic decisions. The quiet, repeated actions that train your nervous system, your focus, and your standards every single day. Here's why rituals are so powerful. They remove the need for motivation. When something is a ritual, you don't debate it. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't ask how you feel. You just do it, because that's who you are now. And that consistency creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence reinforces identity. But understand this, a ritual is not just a habit. A habit can be mindless. A ritual is intentional. It has meaning. It has purpose. It puts you into a state. And state determines everything. How you think, what you notice, what you do next. That's why how you start your day matters so much. The first moments of the day set the emotional and neurological tone. If you begin reactive, checking messages, scrolling, rushing, you train your brain to live in response mode. But if you begin deliberately moving your body, controlling your breath, focusing your mind, you step into creator mode. You decide who you're going to be before the world makes its demands. And it doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, simple rituals done with intensity beat complex routines done inconsistently every time. A few minutes of focused breathing can change your entire state. A few minutes of movement can shift your energy. A few minutes of intentional focus can direct your mind toward what matters instead of what's loud. The key is this. Rituals must be non-negotiable, not extreme, not perfect, but consistent. Because the brain learns through repetition, not intensity alone. Every time you keep a small ritual, you reinforce trust with yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of discipline. Most people fail not because they aim too high, but because they try to rely on willpower instead of structure. Willpower is unreliable. It fluctuates with sleep, stress, and emotion. Rituals bypass that. They create automatic success. And here's something most people miss. Your rituals should not just prepare you to do. They should train you how to be. Your rituals should condition confidence, clarity, strength, and focus into your nervous system. Over time, these states become familiar. And what's familiar becomes your baseline. That's when success starts to feel natural instead. Forced. But rituals don't stop at the morning. You need anchors throughout the day. Moments that reset your state when life hits, because it will hit. Pressure will come. Disappointment will show up. And without a ritual to interrupt stress, you'll default to old coping patterns. High performers don't avoid stress. They recover quickly. They know how to change state on command. A shift in breathing, a shift in posture, a shift in focus. That's not luck, that's trained ability. And then there's the ritual that most people ignore entirely, how they end the day. The brain consolidates learning during rest. What you focus on before sleep matters. If you end the day replaying frustration, your nervous system stays wired. But if you end the day with reflection, what you learned, what you handled, what you're grateful for, you train your brain to look for progress instead of problems. Rituals are how you wire success into your subconscious. They make growth inevitable. You stop asking, will I stay consistent? Because consistency is built into the structure of your day. And let me say this clearly, rituals don't restrict freedom. They create it. When your energy is high, your focus is sharp, and your emotions are regulated, you have more choice, more creativity, more presence. Discipline is not the opposite of freedom. It's the path to it. Now, people often ask, how long does it take for rituals to work? That's the wrong question. The right question is, how fast can I decide this is who I am now? Because the moment a ritual becomes part of your identity, it sticks. You don't quit being who you are, miss a day, fine, don't miss twice. Because the danger is not breaking the ritual, it's breaking the identity. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be consistent enough to build momentum. And momentum is powerful. Once it starts, it pulls you forward, even on hard days, even when motivation is low, even when life is messy. That's when transformation becomes sustainable. So don't wait for some future version of you to start acting differently. Build rituals that force the future into the present. Small daily actions that make success unavoidable. Because when your days are designed with intention, your life no longer runs on hope. It runs on structure. And when your rituals are aligned, success stops being a goal and starts becoming your default. Let's talk about something most people underestimate, but it's shaping their destiny every single day, whether they like it or not. Your environment is not neutral. It's not just around you, it's programming you. And if you don't consciously design it, it will design you by default. Think about it. Human beings are pattern recognition machines. We absorb what we see, hear, and feel repeatedly. The people around you, the conversations you listen to, the content you consume, the standards you tolerate, these are all silently voting on who you become. And the scary part, most of this is happening below conscious awareness. People love to say, I'm strong enough to stay focused no matter what, but willpower is fragile when it's constantly under attack. That's why even smart, capable people fall back into old habits when they step into the wrong environment. It's not that they lost discipline, it's that the environment won. If you put a healthy person in an unhealthy environment long enough, their behavior will change. Not because they're weak, but because humans adapt. Adaptation is one of our greatest strengths, but if you don't direct it, it becomes your greatest liability. Your environment is constantly signaling what's normal, what's acceptable, what's expected, and your nervous system adjusts to match it. If chaos is normal, your body learns chaos. If excuses are normal, your standards drop. If growth is rare, comfort becomes king. That's why trying to change your life without changing your environment is like trying to swim upstream while holding a weight. You might make progress for a while, but eventually fatigue wins. The current pulls you back. So the question is not, am I influenced by my environment? You are. The real question is, am I influenced by it consciously or unconsciously? High performers don't rely on self-control. They rely on environmental control. They remove friction from the habits they want and add friction to the habits they don't. They make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Look at the people you spend the most time with. Do they talk about possibilities or problems, growth or excuses, responsibility or blame? You don't need to judge them. You just need to be honest, because emotional states are contagious. Standards are contagious. Energy is contagious. And if you're the most driven person in the room, you're in the wrong room. This doesn't mean abandoning people. It means being intentional. It means choosing environments that pull you forward instead of quietly pulling you back. Sometimes growth requires distance, not forever, but long enough for a new identity to stabilize. An environment isn't just people, it's information. What you feed your mind daily becomes your internal dialogue. If you constantly consume fear, outrage, and negativity, your brain starts to believe the world is dangerous and opportunity is scarce. But if you consistently expose yourself to growth, strategy, and empowerment, your mind starts looking for solutions instead of threats. Your physical space matters too. Cluttered space creates mental noise. Disorganized surroundings drain focus. You don't need perfection, but you need alignment. Your environment should reflect who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And then there's the environment of standards. What you tolerate becomes your baseline, the conversations you allow, the behavior you excuse, the limits you accept. Every time you tolerate less than your standard, you reinforce the old identity. Every time you raise a standard, you send a new signal. This is who I am now. This is especially true in moments when it's uncomfortable. Saying no, setting boundaries, walking away from situations that no longer fit. These moments don't just change your schedule, they change your self-image, and identity always follows standards. Now, let me be clear. Changing your environment doesn't mean waiting for perfect conditions. It means making strategic adjustments. One decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one upgrade at a time. You might start by curating what you listen to in the morning, by limiting exposure to things that drain you, by spending more time with people who challenge you, by designing a workspace that supports focus instead of distraction. These changes may seem small, but their impact is massive because they work on you continuously. Your environment never takes a day off. It's either reinforcing your future or preserving your past. And here's the shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, can I stay strong in this environment? Ask, why am I staying in an environment that requires constant strength? Strength is meant for growth, not survival. When your environment supports your goals, discipline becomes easier. Focus becomes natural. Energy stabilizes. You stop fighting temptation because temptation isn't constantly shoved in your face. And as your environment upgrades, something subtle but powerful happens. Your self-respect grows because you're no longer hoping to change. You're structuring change. You're showing yourself that your future matters enough to protect. That's when momentum accelerates because now your environment is working for you even when you're tired, distracted, or unsure. So if you're serious about transformation, stop relying solely on internal strength. Design an external world that reflects your highest standards. Because when your environment is aligned, growth is no longer a struggle. It becomes the path of least resistance. Now, this is where everything comes together because identity, physiology, emotion, rituals, environment, all of it means nothing if you don't cross this final line. This is the line between knowing and becoming. And that line is commitment in motion. Most people think they're committed when they're interested, when they're excited, when they feel inspired, but interest fades. Inspiration comes and goes. Real commitment shows up when emotion drops, when fear rises, and when no one is watching. Commitment is not a feeling. It's a decision you act on before certainty arrives. Here's the truth. You will never feel ready. Waiting to feel ready is just fear wearing a polite mask. The mind wants guarantees. The future doesn't offer them. So if you wait for confidence before you act, you'll wait forever. Confidence is built after action, not before it. The moment you move, something powerful happens. Your brain begins to reorganize around the decision. Focus sharpens, resources appear, creativity wakes up, but none of that activates while you're standing still. Motion is the signal. Action tells the nervous system this is happening. And once the nervous system believes it's happening, it mobilizes energy instead of resistance. This is why public commitment matters. When a decision stays private, it stays negotiable. When it becomes visible, spoken, shared, declared, it gains weight. Not because of pressure from others, but because your identity is now on the line, and human beings will fight harder to stay consistent with who they've declared themselves to be than with what they've quietly hoped for. Public commitment is not about approval. It's about accountability to your future self. It collapses hesitation. It forces clarity. It eliminates the escape routes that keep the old identity alive. And make no mistake, when you commit publicly, fear will spike. That's normal. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you're stepping beyond conditioning. Growth always feels unsafe before it feels empowering. If it feels comfortable, you're not changing, you're repeating. This is where standards take over. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your standards. A standard says, this is who I am now, and this is how I show up. No negotiation, no excuses, no waiting, and standards are revealed in action, not intention. When you do the thing you said you would do, especially when it's inconvenient, you lock in a new identity. You tell your nervous system, we keep our word. That single message builds more confidence than 1,000 affirmations ever could. But understand this, commitment doesn't mean perfection. It means non-negotiable persistence. You will stumble. You will have off days. The difference now is that quitting is no longer an option. You don't stop because you're tired. You rest, you recover, and you continue. This is also why speed matters. Slow decisions drain emotional energy. The longer you hesitate, the louder fear gets. When clarity hits, act. You can refine while moving. You can't build momentum while waiting. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates mastery. But it all starts with movement. And here's something most people don't realize: when you act before you feel ready, you're training courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to move with it present. And courage practiced daily becomes confidence. As you commit and act, something shifts in how you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone who wants change and start identifying as someone who does what they say. That shift is irreversible, because once you experience yourself as decisive, going back to hesitation feels painful. This is also where the future pulls you forward. When you commit fully, your actions create evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief strengthens identity, and identity drives behavior automatically. The loop completes itself. And notice this: when you're fully committed, you stop needing external motivation. You don't need someone to push you. You don't need perfect conditions. You move because stopping would break alignment with who you are now. That's power. So don't ask yourself if you're ready. Ask yourself if you're willing. Willing to act before clarity. Willing to commit before confidence. Willing to become uncomfortable long enough to become unstoppable. Because the moment you decide and move, the past loses its grip, the future gains momentum, and the new you stops being a possibility and starts being a fact. Decide, move, and let your actions prove who you are.